All right. Well, good morning. This is Jonathan Koppas, the University of Illinois. Thank you for everybody for tuning in on this frigid Friday and joining us for a little discussion of the base acre reallocation decision as we continue the webinar series on the Farm Bill Toolbox, discussing the various topics, the various decisions for farmers, for landowners that come out of this 2014 Farm Bill. This morning we're going to focus on the base acre reallocation and go through that decision, particularly because the deadline for that is rapidly approaching. It's next week, and landowners need to get into FSA soon. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them in. Jim will present them on a screen here in front of me, and I'll get to them as we go, or at the end of the presentation, we'll hit as many questions as we have time for. So go ahead and start typing those in as you have them, and we'll try to cover them as we go. With that, we're going to get started. As always, we are working with an excellent coalition of universities and organizations that have been part of the development outreach effort that's part of this cooperative agreement with the United States Department of Agriculture that came out of the Farm Bill. And through that, we have developed the web tools and resources you're going to see, as well as hosting many meetings, webinars, and other events around the country to help farmers and landowners get through the Farm Bill decisions here. So what we're going to look at and go over again is the base acre reallocation decision. But as always, I want to remind everybody of the resources that are out there. What you see on the screen in front of you is just a reference to the Farm Bill Toolbox. The Farm Bill Toolbox is part of the FarmDoc site here at the University of Illinois, and it has been designed to kind of be your one-stop resource. Through that, we have all kinds of seminars, webinars, and other information, articles, and so forth. We also have what we call the 7 steps or the 7 decision steps. And then we're going to walk through the decision step for the base acre reallocation, but the entire 7 steps is designed to help you walk through these various decisions and provide as much information around it as you go. And of course, there's links to webinars like the one you're listening to this morning, all of which are archived and available on that website. And then the calculators, articles, and pretty much everything else that we've got that is related to or relevant to the decisions and the farm programs is on there and can be found quite easily. And that's the Farm Bill Toolbox. You see the website on the screen in front of you, or of course the easy way is just to type in Farm Bill Toolbox in any search engine, and it's usually one of the first results that will appear. So like I said, we're looking at step 3 today, and this is the decision to retain or reallocate your base acres. You see the 7 steps there in front of you on the screen. Probably the most important thing about this decision is the deadline. Right now, it's still February 27th. That's next Friday. In some conversations with FSA, there's a lot of concern that there has not been the movement towards getting this covered, getting this decision made that they would like to see. And there's concerns about getting everybody through the process. So maybe the first and last takeaway of this discussion this morning is the time is now to get this decision done. So you need to get into your FSA office and look to either retain or update your payment yields and retain or reallocate your base acres. Again, that deadline is next Friday. As always, we want to just keep the reminder that when we talk about decisions in this Farm Bill, we are talking decisions that are made FSA farm by FSA farm. So many of you will be dealing with multiple decisions across multiple FSA farms, but each one of those farm numbers is going to be, the decision is going to be made for each one of those farm numbers. And of course, these are all one-time and irrevocable decisions. So when that deadline passes next Friday, the decision's over and it's locked, and you cannot change it. You cannot go back and update if you forgot to, or reallocate if you didn't get around to it. That decision's closed, and the payment yields and base acres associated with that FSA farm remain for the life of this Farm Bill. And of course, just a reminder on the programs, that is coming up in just a little over a month now. March 31st is that program decision deadline. We will be having more webinars for the program aspects, particularly looking at some webinars coming up in early March once we've updated all the modeling and analysis based on the latest price estimate forecasts and when we finally know the 2014 county average yields that will be used in the Ark County program. So stay tuned for those webinars. The registration links are available on the Farm Bill Toolbox, and we encourage everybody to find time to join us for one of those webinars coming up in the next few weeks. But again, today we're going to look at the base acre decision. So this is a fairly straightforward decision. Your farm, your FSA farm, has base acres associated with it. Much of that, is going to date maybe as far back as the 80s, at least back to 96. So you're going to have kind of an old distribution of base acres. You may have some crops on there that have base on your farm that you do not plant and have no intention of planting. And that was all given to you in a letter that FSA sent out back in July or early August. That'll tell you what base acres are associated with your farm and what that distribution amongst the program crops on your farm. So you may have so many base acres allocated to corn, to soybeans, to wheat, or you go south, you may be looking at sorghum, southeast, rice, peanuts, cotton, and all that. So you've got the base acres associated. Your decision is to keep those base acres as they are distributed in that FSA letter, or you can reallocate the base. And this is a reallocation, so this is not an update. The decision will not allow you to increase base acres. You also will not decrease base acres through this decision. If you go into the decision with 100 base acres on an FSA farm and reallocate, you come out with 100 base acres. And we'll show some examples of that here today. But it's a reallocation. You're just redistributing the base acres. And how you do that then is it's going to look at what was planted on that farm from 2009 to 12. That information is contained in the FSA letter. That is the information that you have reported or that has been reported to FSA for that farm as planted or prevented planted or subsequent plant. It's all listed there on the FSA letter, and that's the information you're going to use to make this determination. So each of those 2009 to 12 crop years, you're going to look at the ratio between what was planted to each crop versus what was planted to all crops on that farm as a way of determining the ratio. And then that's going to be applied back to that total base acre number to get you the option of reallocating. But it is just one or the other. So you either keep it as it is or you reallocate it to the new distribution. You can't pick and choose the crops. You cannot select your base acres or anything like that. It's determined by those planted acres, and it's either the current distribution or the reallocation. This decision is important because all of the programs in this farm bill pay on base acres. None of them are making payments using planted acres. They are all using the base acres that are on that farm. And Ark County and PLC, they're going to pay on 85% of the base for each crop that they're elected on, and the Ark individual program is going to pay on 65% of the total base acres. So obviously, if you're thinking through these steps a little bit more, the allocation may matter less or not have any real application in an Ark individual decision, but it certainly will have implications in Ark County and PLC because those are crop by crop. But again, the base acre reallocation decision is for all the crops on the farm. And importantly, this is for the landowner. So always keeping in mind kind of the way these things operate. The base acres are records that run with that farmland. And so the owner of the farmland is the one who makes this decision. In many cases, landowners have given power of attorney to their tenant, to their producer. That power of attorney should still be good for this decision. The only thing you want to do is just double check there is a box on the form that will that says that the power of attorney is good for this and future program decisions. So long as that box is checked, that power of attorney still is good and is usable for this decision, in which case then the person holding the power of attorney can make the decision for the landlord. But again, the key about this is that this reallocation and that it matters because of the fact that the programs are making payments on base. And so they're not paying on what you plant, they're paying on the base acres on this record of acres on the farm. Just another couple quick notes about some of the operational aspects with the base acres in this farm bill. We get this question a lot about Conservation Reserve Program, the CRP. So what happened was when you put acres in CRP for a 10 or 15-year contract, those base acres are essentially removed from getting payment under programs, but they still exist. They're kind of held in abeyance under the CRP. And then when those acres exit the CRP contract, what they will do is return as the base acres that went in. So part of the agreement between you and FSA or the CCC, the Commodity Credit Corporation, when you put it in the CRP, was that you wouldn't lose the base. And so when those come out, those base acres will return. So if you put 20 base acres of corn into the CRP back 8 or 9 years ago, and that contract expires here in a couple years, and you're going to let it return, what will come back out then is the 20 base acres of corn, and that will happen irrespective of the reallocation decision that we're talking about. So just kind of always keep in mind that if you got CRP, if you got acres in CRP, those kind of stand on their own, and then they'll come back into the program once they exit the CRP and once the contract is expired on them. Also, just another note on base acres. There are provisions in the statute that require a reduction anytime that land is subdivided or developed or is otherwise removed from farming. Now, this is not a part of the reallocation decision. This is separate. This is an ongoing requirement that if land is taken out of farming, the base acres have to be reduced when it is. And so, again, the reallocation decision is not going to decrease your acres. It's not going to increase your acres. You're going to come out of the reallocation with the same amount of base acres. And then the only way that those ever get reduced in this case is, or that are required to be reduced, is if we've got something like a subdivided bit of farmland that's turned into a housing division or something. And in that case, the base acres will be reduced. So what we're going to do then from this point on is jump onto the decision tools that we have available. You see some screenshots of those in front of you now. There is a base acre reallocation and yield updating tool that you can find on the Farm Bill Toolbox. That's an Excel spreadsheet. We're going to show that here in a minute, and I'll show you where to find it. And then we're also going to look at what is available on the Agricultural Policy Analysis System, or APAS, which is the big online modeling capability. And we're going to use that as well to help understand how to make this decision. So now that we know what we're deciding, how do we sort out which decision to make? So let's start with the Toolbox. This is the Farm Bill Toolbox in front of you. Since you're on the webinar, I presume you guys have seen much of this and know that your webinars and the registration for them are here. You see that we're going to go back over the programs in a couple weeks and run through 3 more of these webinars that will look specifically at the program decision. And then down here are all the archived webinars from previous decisions, or from previous webinars for the decisions. What I was talking about here, we've got a base acre reallocation. So if you go into the Fast Tool button, you can also access this from the 7 steps process. They're right there, or right here on the home page. We've gotten a lot of feedback from users that really wanted these more prominent, and so we've updated the Farm Bill Toolbox to show that. The Fast Tools are here. If you click on this, it'll take you to a screen to download, and you'll go through that download process. Now, this is an Excel spreadsheet, so it's going to download that Excel application to your computer. We have run into, I think even as recent as yesterday, there are occasionally some challenges with Macs, and I wish I had better advice on how to deal with that. We are running it on a Mac this morning, so it's certainly possible to do. But that's an issue between Mac and Microsoft on that. But just keep in mind, we are talking about an Excel tool. And then, as I mentioned, we've got APAS. We've got the online calculator. And there are 2 ways to look at base acre reallocation. I'm only going to show the quick calculator today just to avoid too much time going through custom farm and entering information. But we do have the base acre reallocation quick calculator. So if you go through this, you can enter your crops. In this case, you're going to want to have every crop that has base, as well as every crop that you've planted that's on that FSA letter. So I'm going to do a quick example here where I've got a couple hundred base acres of corn, 100 of soybeans, and 0 of wheat. But in the course of the last couple years, I have begun to move some wheat into my rotation. So let's say I start off with a complete rotation on this farm, and then I start getting to a wheat, adding wheat into the rotation. So just a really simple equation, or a simple example here. One thing to note when you're using this tool is you have to put zeros in. You can't leave any of these blanks. So if you've got a crop here, you're going to have to enter zeros if there's been no planted acres. Because remember, what we're doing is looking at the ratio. And so those zeros are going to get factored into the total aspect. So the first thing you notice, we got 300 base acres coming in. We still got 300 going out. In this case, we're not dealing with generic base acres. And if there are specific questions about those, I'm happy to address it. But for the bulk of the audience, that's probably not an issue. Let's see. So we come in with 200 corn, 100 soybeans, 0 wheat. Through this rotation, which I've been adding about 50 acres of wheat in the last couple of years, you see how that ratio changes. So here I'm looking at going from 200 corn to 175. I stay right around 100 acres on soybeans, and then I've added 25 acres of wheat. So that's reflecting my planting changes through here. And then the question becomes which allocation. So my decision is between 200 corn, 100 wheat, or 100 soybeans and 0 wheat, or the reallocated number, 175, 125. And what you're seeing then is this allocation has moved to 25 acres out of corn and into wheat. And so your decision on that farm is does this make sense? Does this make sense for the way you're operating, the way you're going to look at the planting decisions going forward? But frankly, because the programs make payment on base acres, what you really want to look at is the value of the base acres relative to each other in the program. In other words, which ones are likely to have higher payments or trigger more payments under the programs when you make those program decisions. So in this case, we'd be looking at giving up 25 acres of corn to go to wheat. And in most instances we've seen throughout the Midwest, this is probably not a reallocation decision you want to make, because corn is going to be the more valuable base acre here. And so giving up corn for wheat is likely not going to be the best decision for that farm unless you really think you want some wheat base going forward because of your planting decisions. And then you're willing to give up the payments on those 25 acres of corn. So staying with the APAS tool just a little bit longer as we make this decision, you saw that where we've moved 25 acres out of corn into wheat, and I'm going to just do a quick sample farm. So as you go to the analysis, the home page here, this APAS sample farm gives you a kind of a nice way of sorting this base acre decision out as well as your program decision. So let's just jump. I'm going to go to my home county and kind of show what this APAS sample farms can do to help you make the decision. So as you remember, you pick your state and county. What the sample farm is going to do is look at the cropped acreage in that county as compared to all of the counties in the CRD. And then you're going to go out of that cropped acreage. We're going to create a sample farm or simulate a sample farm. So it takes this planted history and it creates a farm scaled to about $500,000 in revenue for the whole farm. And these are sort of the parameters used to develop that. And so by using that information, we come up with a farm with about 443 acres of corn, base acres of corn, 490 soybeans, and 68 wheat. And that's using that planted acre history in the county, scaled up to $500,000. And then it runs these through the model as if those were the base acres on the farm to generate expected program payments. And just note here, we've updated with the most recent price forecast, and we are getting ready to incorporate the 2014 Nass County yields to help improve the accuracy of the analysis. And so that is coming shortly, and we'll be discussing that as we go. Here again is the payment estimate screen. You see the different programs. You remember, for those of you who have been through this before, we've got 3 different price forecasts. CBO is the Congressional Budget Office, USDA, obviously, and then FAPRI out of the University of Missouri. Again, these are not situations where one forecast is more accurate than the other. It's really just kind of a way to look at the 3 main forecasting efforts looking at market year average prices going out in the next 5 years. If you click on show prices, it's going to show you what the prices are that are being used in this modeling effort. So what we do for the base acre reallocation is look really here. And that's the expected program payments per acre by crop. And if you do that, you've got the 1-year horizon or the 5-year horizon. And what you'll see time and time again is what I was saying before. So if you remember that example, we went from 175 base acres of corn to, or 200 base acres of corn to 175, and we moved 25 of them into wheat. And so the key component of this decision is which one has more value in the program, particularly over the 5 years. And you see that play out here. Excuse me. Corn is more valuable per base acre, regardless of whether you're in Arc County or PLC. That's just a more valuable base acre crop. And in that case, you're not likely to want to give up 25 acres at $36 to pick up, 25 acres at $18 or $19. So that's really what kind of this decision boils down to. And so, again, you can go into the sample farms, go all over the country and look at different crops, look at how the base acre value is in the payment estimates. The one thing we always want to keep in mind is that we are, like I said, we're still using we're still using trend yield. We haven't updated to the 2014 yields yet. And so that's gonna come down soon. Again, if we just kind of move around the country, we look at North Dakota, and our sample farm in North Dakota is going to include some sunflowers and wheat. And looking back over these expected program payments per acre, you can see your decision here comparing the different crops and what's more valuable under the programs. Using any of the price scenarios, you typically see this play out, that corn may often be. Here we see, if you were to go to Arc County on corn at $31 an acre and wheat at $33, then that little example we did earlier, it may be a case where picking up some wheat base is actually of good value for that farm. So again, very much depending on where you're at and what these program estimated payments would look like for those base acres. But that becomes kind of your decision, or the main components of your decision on the base acre reallocation. And that's really how you sort of work through this APAS tool as a way to show you the program value by base acre to help you make the decision. So again, that's APAS, and that's online there. And then if we go over and look at the FAST tool that I was showing earlier, you can enter in all of this information, your state, your county, your number of crops, what those crops are. And here I've used my 200, 100 with wheat, and I've just sort of moved in some wheat acres into my planting rotation. And then you can see it down here, how that would come out. And so you're giving up, again, some of that corn acres to go into wheat. Slightly different numbers than I was using in APAS, but same basic concept, that reallocation ratio is what's determining it. And again, these numbers are all in the FSA letter, and so you're just going to plug in what you have on your FSA letter. And then you can look at yield updating. We're not discussing that in detail, but you kind of keep in mind that what you can do is update yields crop by crop to 90% of 2008 to 2012 average yields on the farm. And in this case, we can see the updated possibilities here. There's a plug yield in there as well. And whenever you're below 75% of the county average over those years, it plugs that in to replace it. And so you see here, we had a low yield year in 2012, and so that plug's going to go in its place. For the base acre reallocation decision, then, if you scroll down further, you can see where we're running the FAPRI price range into the base acre allocation using your expected prices. You can see the estimated payments. And again, you can kind of see this difference, right? Either program, ARC, County, or PLC, you're going to see the value of corn. And we're looking Midwest. This is back in Ohio. But you kind of see the relative values of the program base for each crop. And so when you're making that reallocation decision, then you're thinking about the trade-offs based on the value in the programs for the base acres. If you scroll all the way down, then you can see this example, and it's going to show you the retained versus reallocated decision part, and comparing the amount of expected payments using this price range and your payment yields for PLC. And you can see then that your acre reallocation decision, in this case, it's saying you'd retain them because you're going to get higher payments out of either situation here. So again, just a multitude or multiple ways to sort out exactly how to make this decision, but it boils down to which base acres have the most value in that planning history and in your base acre setup. And that is the main resources. I'm going to go back to APAS, and it looks like we've got a question. I have wheat, oat, and barley acres in my base. If I reallocate, I will only have wheat acres. I think I need to reallocate all to wheat, but should I be concerned about losing my barley and oat base? So that's a great question because it highlights a couple things. The first thing is, remember, you don't lose, you still come out at the end of the day with the same amount of base acres. But in any case where your reallocation zeroes out base acres for a crop, we get asked this quite frequently, what happens to those base acres? Well, you've reallocated them in this person's example, you've reallocated them to wheat. That means you no longer have barley or oat base on that farm. That that may make sense. That may make sense for your farm because you're planting all wheat and you intend to do so. And so in this case, you've not been planting barley or oat under the 2009 to 12 scenario, and they're all moving into wheat. So it may make sense for your farm's planting decisions. The question then becomes the value of the various crops in the program. And that's where, I don't know what part of the country we're in there, to have a good sense of where to run an example. Let's see if we're see if we can find some barley and oat base to give us a good example of the program. Here we get barley, dry peas, and wheat in Montana, and you can just look at barley compared to wheat. In this, if I'm in Montana here, you can see the relative values of the two crops. Barley is showing much more value in PLC under the CBO price range. We'll go to the lower USDA range. And again, over the 5-year horizon, you're certainly looking at more value in barley. So back to this individual's question, then this is what you're giving up if you do reallocate to wheat, if you're in Montana. Again, I'm not sure you'd want to run your state and county, and I would again encourage you to use this tool as well, the Excel spreadsheet tool, and enter all those crops here and get some sense of what the expected payments would be per base acre. And that's the best way to make that decision. But do keep in mind that when you zero out the base, it's gone. You've shifted into another crop, and there's no getting that back after this decision next Friday. It would take Congress and a future farm bill or future bill would have to have some sort of legislative requirement or option to take back base that was reallocated. So the likelihood of that is not strong. So I think in this individual's question, you want to look at that value and you want to think about, does it make sense? Do you think it's a great idea to zero out the wheat or the barley and oat base and move it all into wheat? And it may certainly make sense. And again, your program decision may come into a factor on that as well. Which one's got the most value? So I think we've gotten through the bulk of the information for this decision, and I want to go back and make sure we keep these dates in mind. The deadline is fast approaching. We are a week away. So if you have not been into FSA yet, I would encourage you to do so as soon as humanly possible. I would encourage you to use the tools and information available to to try and inform this decision. But time and again, you're looking at the program value for the base acre, but you really need to get moving on this decision because FSA is going to be pretty overwhelmed here trying to sort through this. But with that, I've gone through the information we have on the reallocation decision, and if there are any questions, we have plenty of time for questions, and so I'm happy to take them, or we'll send you back on your way out into the cold morning, I would imagine in most parts from everybody that's listening. But if you got some questions about the base acre reallocation decision, how they work, certainly type them in now, and they'll come here and we'll answer them as we go. Or if there's some other areas of the country we'd like to look at, we can certainly do that as well. If we just kind of move around different parts of the country, we can see different crops, different sample farm examples, but you tend to see over and over again the expected value higher, particularly for corn than soybeans. This is a very consistent comparison between corn and soybeans. If we move, kind of go around the country a little bit here and look at different, let's try it again. Now we're in Kansas. And again, our sample farm, just this time we're going to look at some grain, sorghum, soybeans, and wheat. Expected program payments, again, under the FAPRI scenario, crop by crop over the 5-year horizon. Here you see wheat with some better value or pretty close to corn, and grain sorghum actually showing higher. So you would see more value out of base acres for grain sorghum than you would for wheat or corn or soybeans in this example in Sumner County. So we've got a question here. What happened to a dairy farm that only raises corn and alfalfa and no longer wants to raise alfalfa? So I'm not entirely clear. If you're only raising corn and alfalfa, only corn is a program crop. So if you went into the decision, let's do a quick base acre reallocation. So if all you've got is corn, then all that's going to do, if you got an existing 100 acres of corn, but let's say you've planted 60 corn each year and the rest alfalfa, right? There's not much to it. You're still going to come out with 100 base acres because as far as the program crop is concerned, the ratio is 100% of that program crop, and so that would keep that ratio. So no longer wanting to raise alfalfa. Again, the question is going to be that alfalfa is not a program crop, and so it's not going to have any impact on your base acre reallocation decision. In your case, if you've got 100 corn base and you're only planting corn on those acres, then you would come out with 100 corn base, even if you're not planting all of those base acres to corn, you have been planting some to alfalfa. So hopefully that helps you with that aspect. If we got more questions, certainly send them my way, or we can close up shop a little bit early on this Friday morning. We got another one coming in. Let's see here. 2014 county yields. This is the final piece. You're absolutely right. I believe NASS has just released the information or was about to release the information. The Big Ag Outlook conference is going on in which they release much of the information for this year. We anticipate if we can get that all in this from FSA. I do believe FSA's still got to do a little bit of work on those yield numbers to make sure they apply properly for the FSA system. But as soon as we get them, we are hoping to be able to turn that around. If we could get them early today, we'd like to have that turned around by early next week. So we will try to get that updated as soon as possible. But again, we're waiting on getting that information from USDA. So we have to wait for USDA and FSA to get it to us, and then we will do everything we can to get those updated quickly because we do understand that is the main piece. So stay tuned with that and check the APAS tool, and we'll have that in there as soon as we can. Any other questions you guys might have this morning? happy to take them. We'll give it a couple more minutes. And I'm trying to think of a good place to go for oat base for that previous question. If we got a county with good oat production, I'm not all that familiar on where we might find one. I know Idaho is a big barley producer. Minnesota, maybe. We'll give it a couple more minutes, and then we will call it a day. So if you've got any other questions, please send them in. Oh, we got a couple more here. What does the 50% coverage mean? Oh, yes, on this tool, on the APAS sample farms, this is your crop insurance coverage level. What it presets or defaults to is the most popular crop insurance coverage, what is the most purchased crop insurance coverage level in your county. And so that's going to be determined by where you are. Let's just stay with Cass counties here for a minute. And that's going to populate there. You can change that up or down. What that's going to impact then is your expectations for SCO. SCO is a crop insurance program that bottoms out with the individual coverage level. Well, this isn't a good example here. We'll go back, come back home a minute, and you'll see it. You'll see SCO show up here. So if I'm at an 80% coverage level, the expected payments net premium, because you are paying premium for crop insurance coverage, if I move that up, it's going to shrink the SCO expectation. Or so if I move it down to, say, 70%, it's going to expand what is potential out of SCO. So that's what that component's doing. Let's see, converting corn silage yields to corn grain. That, I don't know if FSA has a conversion factor for that. I would encourage you to check with your county FSA office to know what they do in that case. I know there's been some work on popcorn yields and on seed corn, but I've not, with silage, I'm not sure how they're going to take care of that. We got a question about Perry County, Indiana. At the risk of doing a tour of the country, we'll look at Perry County and see what shows up here. All right, Perry County. And we don't have enough wheat data. Do you keep your old wheat base or go to corn? You're gonna see this time and again, particularly in the Midwestern states, that corn is going to be more valuable than wheat. Again, that's probably the main factor for that decision. Perry County, we don't have enough cropped acreage of wheat. Unfortunately, we don't show enough to be able to get into the sample farm. We do have an Iowa County here with oats. We can look at that real quick. I'll give it a minute to recalibrate. Let's see if we can find some oats. There, we got oats. And here you can see a comparison then. Oats, quite a bit lower even than in soybeans. So, going back to that question, if you're shifting oat base out into something like corn or wheat or barley, you're probably going to see more value out of that base acre. One question here: how do you reach landowners to take action? Again, we have been providing as much information as we can in meetings. I mean, the key is getting that decision made. It sounds like this is one of those struggles with a landlord who may not be as actively involved in things, and I don't have a great sense on how you get a landlord that doesn't want to make the decision to make that decision. it's up to them. It's their base acres on that farm, and they, under the law, they have the option to make the decision. The bottom line is you're not. If the landowner refuses to make the decision, you still keep the base acres, so you don't lose the base acres going forward. Just you miss out on the opportunity to reallocate them potentially to the more valuable base. But we encourage, just talking to the landlord and trying to work with them. But I don't have a great playbook for a reluctant or a reluctant landlord to get him into that FSA office. You can certainly offer to help do the paperwork for them, and in which case then you just need to get the signature. But there is not a lot you can do there because it's up to them. We have a question for Illinois, LaSalle County. We'll do one more of these. And again, you can see over the 5-year horizon, the CBO price estimates, just the relative values of the base. And so, this pretty much holds for much of the Corn Belt, much of the Midwest, particularly about everywhere we've looked in Illinois. You are not going to want to give up corn base. It's going to be more valuable. You certainly don't want to shift corn base into soybeans, and it's going to be tough to make wheat make sense on that too. Just in Midwestern crops, corn tends to be the more valuable crop time in and time out for much of the major corn areas here in the Midwest. Well, it looks like we've run out of questions, and is FSA aware of? Well, we got one more. FSA and the time frame. Are they aware of it? Yes. Again, the county yields do not necessarily have to impact the reallocation decision, although it will impact the 2014 expected payments. Again, we're looking over the 5-year life of what's more valuable. But, I got no good answer about the February 27 deadline. At this point in time, we've seen nothing on an extension and are not anticipating it. I think the basic guidance, the basic rule of thumb here is likely to hold. You can look at an example. If you go to one of the other fast tools we've got available that compare Ark County to PLC, and look at these different prices, you can move up. We'll come back to Illinois here for a minute. Oops, wrong eye. There we go. What you start to get into then is how high you think the corn yields are going to be. Let's move that up. So here I've got, you begin to see as you move higher and higher on the county yields. And so for McLean County at a 365, we're down to 350 is where a lot of these guys have it now. About 225 or 350 is going to zero out. But you can see if you stayed at 350 all those years, you see how close you're getting. How much does this impact that decision? We certainly understand some of the frustration, but we can't. We've got no control over when they decide to update those. Again, your soybeans are not going to show up as valuable under any of the crop scenarios that we've seen thus far. You can run all kinds of scenarios here on your own to see that. Again, right now the February 27th deadline appears to hold, and we have not seen an extension discussion. Well, I believe we have gotten through all of this information. There is much more information on the Farm Bill Toolbox. If you want to read through the discussion on the base acre reallocation decision, we've got articles here, including how to use the tools, including looking at the use of RMA records for the yield update and your base acre reallocation decision. So quite a bit of information out there. We encourage you to use that, but maybe even more importantly, if you haven't done so yet, let's get into FSA and get that decision taken care of. And with that, appreciate your time here this morning and then tuning in for our discussion on the base acre reallocation. Just a reminder that March 6th will be the next webinar at 9 a.m. on Friday, March 6th, and we're going to talk about the program decisions. By that time, we anticipate having that yield information and having it all uploaded in the models and running. And so we will be running analysis using the 2014 county yields. So we encourage everybody to tune into March 6th, and then we've got the next 3 weeks lined up, the 13th and the 18th, just running through more and more of the information as we have it. So with that, again, thank you everybody for taking time out of your day to join us on a webinar, and we hope you come back for one of the next 3 in the series. Thanks. Have a good day.